The journey continues. We're into Unit 3. Unit 3 is the doing massage unit. You've already at Health Enrichment Center been working through these chapters. The information that we'll talk about uh, is going to provide the background, the theory around why we're teaching you massage application the way we are. So um, the information is tested on the MBLEX, but this is the area where we're not, as a massage therapy community, as consistent. So we'll run into the situation where there's multiple opinions about what's right, especially in our chapter we're going to work on right now is chapter 8 with body mechanics and ergonomics. But that's kind of a theme um, through this unit is that the various styles and forms of massage may influence some of the terminology and some of the approaches. What we have presented is what is primarily found on the MBLEX exam according to the entry-level analysis project in terms of what is most consistent and most generic. So let's go. Here's our fundamentals book. And oh dear, got to get the glasses on. Yep, there we go. We are now in Unit 3, the massage process. All right. So these chapters have really, really good video demonstration technique support, and I'll show you that on the Evolve site. All right. So here's the body mechanics. And the research foundation, the Massage Therapy Research Foundation is involved in some research around ergonomics and how that would influence biomechanics. So I'm confident that the recommendations provided here in this textbook are going to be valid. But there may be some other recommendations that show up based on what the ergonomics study finds out. So I will keep you posted on that in the classroom. Excuse me. So in a chapter like this, it's mostly a do it chapter. Um, you want to pay particular attention to the figures and the pictures and then the accompanying videos. So, as always, we start out with our chapter objectives and key terms. And then as we go through here, here's that development that I just mentioned with the Massage Therapy Foundation and research. So that there is a lot of confusion about what is, they call it a duty schedule, or what is a typical work schedule for massage therapy. And it is a physical application, but it's no more physical than any other physical job. So the ergonomics and biomechanics principles that focus on other occupations are applicable to us if they are talking about the type of force delivery that we do with massage and the more uh, ongoing repetitive movements. So the difference is that in other occupations, the typical workday is 7 to 8 hours with a lunch break or a couple of other breaks that go with it. Um, for massage, it still might be a 7 to 8 hour workday, but it only is going to include about 5 to 6 hours of massage if it's a full-time day. And then the rest of the time has to do with non-massage work activities, such as your charting, your facility management, etc. So, we want to make sure that you can function as a full-time massage therapist, which would be a 30 to 35 at the maximum 40-hour work week with 25 actual hours of massage application, sometimes pushing a little bit towards 26, 27. So if you were going to pair that out into a work day, that would look like 5 days a week, 5 hours of massage per day. So if you're going to do that, you got to do it efficiently and you got to do it well. And that's one of the things we keep focusing on over and over and over. So you can read through the content here. It helps establish a baseline and concepts and understanding. And then we're going to take a look at the research here and what um, has been done either in massage therapy or a similar occupation, such as physical therapy. So there is a terminology structure. You'll need to know what this is because that could show up in a question on the NBLEX exam. The NBLEX exam does test ergonomics and biomechanics, but the questions are relatively general because there isn't any definitive agreement on what is right and what is wrong. So what we're really looking at is physics, and this gives you a little bit of background so that when we're telling you about ground reaction force, for example, you've got a little bit of an understanding of where some of those concepts came from. Then we also have to be aware of repetitive stress injuries. And if we aren't efficient, if we aren't using our body smartly, then massage therapists are prone to that. Okay, so ergonomics is the environment and the equipment. Biomechanics is your body. So here's the research, and do read through this. Ed Moore is actually a graduate of Health Enrichment Center. And then here are the recommendations, and this is how you're being taught for based on this research for how you're going to most effectively use your own body. So stand more upright. Trunk flexion occurs at the hip, does not exceed 20 degrees of flexion. And that's how you can also determine table height, is that you don't want to forward flex at your hips more than 20 degrees from anatomical position. That's not very far. So if the table's too low, you're bending over too much. If the table is too low, you're not using your forearm efficiently. If the table is too low, your feet are too far apart or your stance is too spread out. And that is not going to be efficient. Also, you're going to see a problem with some yoga type stances or martial arts type stances. In the past they tried to incorporate that into massage therapy, body mechanics, and it really hasn't worked. So you might see warrior stance, horse stance, that sort of thing. And so a horse stance, like you're straddling a horse. So it's a symmetrical stance. Warrior stance is an asymmetrical stance, one foot in front of the other, but they've got the back leg too externally rotated. Work close to the client, don't reach. Avoid working at the ends of the table. So where you stand at the end of the table and you see people do that long stroke all the way down the back and then back up. Don't do that. Your stroke excursion, how long you glide, is not very far. And so that's another carryover from the past on how all strokes have to be long and flowing and gliding and cover the entire area and all of that. You want a rhythmic, integrated approach. But the idea of these big, long strokes is not good body mechanics. So this information came from the preliminary study, phase 1 of the research process being performed by the Massage Therapy Foundation. And then here is the link to that. So also part of this is how you schedule and perfect that 50-minute massage application within a very typical classic 60-minute therapeutic hour. And 10 minutes of that time has to do with the client getting on and off the table and doing an assessment for the session. If you're doing an intake or it's the first client, or you're doing a first time client, or you're doing a reassessment, then you need to schedule 30 minutes or so in addition for that. But you can do what are we focusing on today? How does that fit in with the care plan that we developed? That all fits within that 60-minute session with typically 50 minutes of a variety of massage applications. 90 minutes should be the maximum length. I've mentioned this before. In terms of ethics and professionalism, it's hard to stay within the therapeutic alliance focus with a client longer than the 90 minutes. Longer time frames sets up so that the conversation and the interaction may move outside of that therapeutic relationship. 2 hours is just too long, and it doesn't give the massage therapist a chance to change position and walk around and move around. It's too long for the client to be on the table as well. Usually there needs to be about the maximum, and you can go without needing the restroom, either the client or the massage practitioner, is 90 minutes. And so just don't do that. So it also says here, if you are self-employed or without receptionist support, then you're going to have more time in between the client sessions. So this is kind of cool. This is a recommended duty shift, gives you some idea. So it is least common for a massage therapist to work full time. It is most common for a massage therapist to work 3/4 time, but they think that is full time, and it isn't. And common is a part-time, a half-time schedule. So it goes through here, and so let's look at the most common, 3/4 time. Hours worked per week, 25 to 30. Hours of massage performed is 20 to 25. Hours worked per shift 5 to 6 hours. Hours of massage per shift, 4 to 5. Non-massage hours worked per shift, 45 minutes. And work breaks, one 15-minute break and one 30-minute meal break. So if you're looking over here at halftime, um, it's unlikely that there will be breaks. And if you're over here on full time, it is best if there are two breaks, with a 30-minute lunch meal break in the middle. Okay, let's get down into the real meat of the issue here. You know what these section objectives are, and you know the importance of these bullet points on how we're going to narrow down into the content. All right, now there's a science to this. Ergonomics is a science, kinesiology is a science. What OSHA has done to look at safe work environments, that's all based on science. So what we got here is best as that is available for massage therapy is based on research and science, not something Sandy Fritz made up. Sandy Fritz looking at all the research and Luke Fritz looking at all the research and applying and adapting. But, this isn't our style. This is good approach. All right. So this is what ergonomics is. So then we look at this specifically in terms of the massage area. And you don't want the room too small. You want to make sure that you've got enough space to easily move around the table and without having to scrunch your body mechanics, or your body up and not be able to efficiently move from one place to the other. So it gives you the measurements here, and if at all possible, an ideal space is around 12 by 12, but effectively you can work in a 10 by 10. The table is on an angle. That would be a condition of what any kind of facility you would work in, including your own office. But you would, when you think about being hired, what would the work environment look like? I already mentioned table height here. So if you are working in a location, the employer should provide hydraulic adjustable tables. If they don't, go work someplace else. You can't carry those around though. So they're trying to come up with a portable hydraulic electric adjust type table, and it hasn't been real successful yet. So for those of you that are moving your table around or taking it up and putting it down, you're going to have to be aware of how you adjust prior to a massage. But it's unlikely that you will adjust the height during the massage, which is unfortunate, but there is a way to adapt around that. You don't want the table too high, but for goodness sakes, you don't want it too low. And that's what I see over and over and over. The table is too low. There's a misconception that you're going to be able to apply more pressure if the table is lower. And that is not accurate. So not too high, but really not too low. and not too wide either. If you're reaching across, that is not going to be conducive to good body mechanics. So if you have a wide table, then you're going to need to have people scoot back and forth. Forearm first. Use your forearm as much as possible, and that is uh, helped by a table that is more positioned around your hip height. Now it's going to depend on how thick the client is and all of that, but once you start with the guideline that hits most everybody, then you can adjust individually. So this gives you some examples, some picture examples here. The table height here for use of the hand is about right. But it's too low in this figure. And then use of the forearm, this picture is about right, but this one then would be too high. Now, if she was addressing the arm, then the table height would be about right. But if you're in these thicker areas of the body, that's where the height adjustable table is so helpful. You could bring the table down a little bit while you're working in this area, and then you could bring it up a little bit while you're working like an area that isn't as thick, like the arm. Okay, so here are some general recommendations, and then you will find your own best approach once you experiment and once you start doing more massage. So if you feel comfortable doing with the way you're doing it and you're only doing one massage a day, that's very, very different than if you're doing 4 or 5. You can also sit on a chair or a stool, and that's helpful. You got to make sure that the stool doesn't roll back. There's for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So if that stool is not locked, you're going as soon as you apply force towards the client, the reaction force is going to push you away, and those wheels are going to scooch back. So make sure it locks. You can also work on a floor mat. We'll be giving you a little bit of exposure to that. The general principles still apply. And when we're looking at this working on a floor or a mat, we're going to talk to you about using your feet as well. I am not a fan of the massage chairs. I think that they do provide a promotional support, like if you're going to market doing some chair massage someplace. I have never really been able to find for long periods of time doing massage over and over using the various massage chairs. I've never been able to find a really sustainable posture to be able to do that well. So these are OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration recommendations, and the body mechanics that you are taught follow these recommendations. And then there's some figures here for you to take a look at. So you absolutely don't want to be in the red, green, and just into the yellow is how you want your body to be. And then this is Dr. Wayne Albert was it has been one of the experts that has reviewed this chapter, and he has talked here more about what happens with repetitive strain. So pay attention to the mentoring tips. And then the biomechanics, what we're really doing is shifting center of gravity from a supportive uh, framework at the floor. And the best example I have on that is how you would lean a ladder against a wall. So there are lots of figures here. It is hard to get really good angles sometimes. So there can sometimes be a little distortion. So, for example, it looks like these Luke's feet are too far apart, are too close together, but they're not really, and it has to do with how the camera angle is coming in on this. So this is giving you an example of how you're going to line up, and then how your feet, in this case, you're down on a knee, or if this were a stool or a chair, um, so that you're shifting center of gravity forward, the feet are stable on the floor, or in this case, the knee, or the table leg, or chair leg or stool, and then you go forward and transfer weight through a stable arm. And the weak link is the shoulder girdle. So it really is helpful to do these proficiency exercises and having somebody watch you and then play around, vary the table height. Somebody that is tall with long legs is going to need a relatively high table. You may need, if you don't have an adjustable table that'll go up and down, the client may need a stool to get up and down. So make sure you slow down and pay attention to this as you are self-evaluating, because this is an ongoing forever, ever, ever process, self-evaluating your ergonomics and your body mechanics. So here is another picture that shows the same thing. Um, when you are pushing, because remember, massage is application of a mechanical force, a push or a pull. So a push is a shift the center of gravity forward, and a pull is shifting the center of gravity backward. Keep your elbow straight, not hyperextended, if you are going to be using your hand. Otherwise, the force starts here at the feet, goes up through stacked joints. The front leg is bent just a little bit and provides balance, straight up. And then it's got to turn a corner here and then come down. And if that elbow is bent, the vector, it's called a vector, the force is going to go off and through the humerus and not go then down into the forearm. Your feet are so important. When I am showing body mechanics or correcting body mechanics, I'm always telling people, pay attention to your feet. Don't look at my hand, look at my feet. That's where everything is happening, is at my feet and in my legs. This shows that shifting of gravity backwards to get a foot or to get a pulling response. And you've got to have foot traction. That's why you do not work in your bare feet or socks. You've got to have a good soled, rubber soled, traction based shoe that will not slip. That is just essential. And you can't slip in the shoe either. So it can't be a clog or a sandal or something open back. So here is an example of adaptation with on a mat, and how you can use a cane to provide stability so that you can lift that one leg right up off the ground and you still got a good 3-point contact. And that's what massage is typically a 3-point contact: weight bearing, support, pressure. And it's the same in the arms: weight bearing, support, pressure. Weight bearing, support, and pressure. Weight bearing, support, and pressure. 3-point support, 3-point base. All right, so here are some basic concepts. And most textbook authors, not just me, have this kind of this content in their textbooks. So this is more likely what you're going to see tested on the MBLEX exam, is what is a principle of body mechanics, and it would be stacking the joints or maintaining core stability or whatever. Some more pictures here on the weight transfer. And you got a stable line. The pressure is coming from the back foot, and you're just going to come forward. And this talks about perpendicularity, which means that based on, as we transfer our weight, we need to be leaning on or coming in at 90 degrees. And so this is a 90-degree angle. This is also using the hand, but the reason why we're able to do that is because we're coming up against a slope on the client. Make sure that your arm is relaxed and that you are working from this part of your arm, not back here, not the point of your elbow, from here to here, here to here when you use your forearm. So here's content on pressure. And this is that vector I was talking about. If your elbow is bent, it's similar to some of the force production going off. Same if you are not leaning against a hill so that your 90-degree contact goes down as well as into the soft tissue. This is a little schematic that gives you an idea. Here's that 3-point contact I was talking about. And the way we teach you is for more pressure. So here's your weight-bearing foot, leg, with the opposite arm applying the pressure into the client, and this foot in between, which is providing support and balance, so that when you start your excursion, you start your glide, as soon as weight is transferred off of this foot and you start to feel it in this foot, you've gone too far. So then you need to either use this foot to push you back to start over, or to start to take a step and move. If you set yourself up like this, and you'll see this a lot in other education, with the opposite of what we've got here, where the arm is paired with the back weight-bearing foot. This foot right here in the middle here is going to be where a lot of the weight lands. And you're going to dissipate the force into that foot as opposed to into this hand or arm. So this section right here, I think, is extremely helpful. And this is the varying pressure levels that we are looking at. And we can look at it as level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. It also can be light. So light would be level 1 and 2. Moderate uh, would be level 3, 4, and possibly into 5. And firm would be starting at 5 and then going into a level 6 and 7. So there are figures here that are going to give you some variables on this. Counter pressure is a way of squeezing two forces together to increase focal pressure in an area. You don't do it very often, but when you do, you want to make sure that you're um, making a maximal use of the pressures being pulled together. So here's a picture of that. So the pressure is applied here, and then as I pull up, I am bringing those forces together. Drag is also important, and we want those tissues to glide, to slide uh, against each other, not just us sliding on the surface. So that is where we want to pay attention to amount of lubricant that we use. And then duration has to do with uh, a couple of things. How long we are in a particular area or how long the session is as a whole. Then here's our speed. These are all of our modifiers: slow, moderate, fast. And for the general relaxation massage that is most pleasurable to most people, we're going to have a moderate to firm, non-painful, moderate to firm pressure with um, a level 2 um, to level 1 drag. And we're not going to stay hyper focused in any one area. And then it gives you the duration. The total duration of the massage is about 45 to 60 minutes. And the speed is slow to moderate. Seldom is it fast. Intensity is a combination of these factors together. And that's what the person is going to feel as uh, uh, are you working in a way that feels like something is happening? There's something satisfying there. A term that sometimes is used is the therapeutic edge. You're right in the Luke will use the term sweet spot. You're right where the person feels like the tissues are being engaged just right. Now, some people have been schooled, some clients have been schooled to think that it's got to be dig, firm, pinpointed pressure, and that is not the case. And so you're going to have to possibly find yourself doing some re-education. You also need to work with the client's body. We all have a rhythm, a breathing rhythm, a heart rate rhythm, all of that. And you can find that by rocking the client. And that may intent, usually it affects the speed of how we are moving. So you want to work within that speed of where the client at the same uh, rhythm that the client's body will rock easily. So we're going to put all these together in some recommendations. So box 8.6 is important. So here's an example. A fragile client, patient, outcomes comforting and soothing. So this would be palliative. Pressure levels 1 or 2 out of 7, little or no drag, slow speed, a relatively short duration. So that's somebody who is frail. Here is your general relaxation massage, pleasure-based, non-fragile, palliative, uh, pressure levels 2 to 3, up to 4, and on the edge of 5. Some drag. Typically, the speed is slow. And your duration is moderate, typically moderate. It's within that 60-minute therapeutic session. So now we're going to look at how we would modify these to address a specific physiological outcome. So we're going to mimic normal. And the example here is the lymphatic system. So surface tissues, um, skin, down into the superficial fascia. Pretty significant drag because we're getting the collectors to uptake in the surface tissues by sliding one tissue layer over the other. So we've got to drag the tissue. The speed is slow. You can't push water. You got to think about a slow pump. And the duration varies, like if you're doing just a local area, or if you're trying to support the whole body, this is very rhythmic and time consuming. Now, if we get into the deeper tissue layers, you can see what has really occurred is that we have used enough pressure to sink down into lymphatic structures that are below the skin and superficial fascia. So here's myofascial release. And so pressure levels still stay within that skin superficial fascia, just on top of the first muscle layer, just on top of the deep fascia. Lots of drag. Speed is slow. And then if this is the general relaxation massage, I misspoke up here just a little bit um, and called this general relaxation. But this is the one right here where most clients are most satisfied most of the time. Pressure level 4 to 5. It's going to penetrate through the first muscle layer into the second muscle layer. It's going to be broad-based. You're going to have enough drag to slide those tissue layers. Your speed is going to be slow. Your duration is going to be that 60, maximum 90 minutes. If we're going to dive down and do a point type compression, you can see how it changes here. So the pressure levels increase. There's no drag. Speed is not a factor, but duration is. So you need to stay on that spot long enough for there to be a neurological change. So that's 3 to 5 seconds. Some people say much longer than that. 10 seconds is plenty. This is how we would narrow in if we wanted to think about changing the pliability of scar tissue. Here is an example if we wanted to make sure that one layer of muscle, the surface layer of muscle, so down into the tissue, because you got your skin, superficial fascia, deep fascia, muscle layers. And then you've got your first layer of muscle, second layer of muscle, and third layer of muscle. You want to make sure that those slide against each other. And that's usually going against the grain, not with it. Here's arterial support. So the main focus here is that the intention is to actually collapse or press an artery together enough so that you occlude or stop the flow, like if you were crimping a hose. So the pressure arteries are deep, so the pressure has to be significant to do that, but broad enough to not damage tissue because nerves and veins are in the same spot. And then here's the adaptation for venous return. Here's how we would adapt if a client bruises easily. This is how we would adapt if a client has fragile bones. If we wanted to encourage a client to have more sympathetic tone, this is what we would do. So this gives you some examples of how adaptation occurs relative to our body mechanics. Our body mechanics and how we are moving through the session does this. We also have to realize there are gender differences here. And even though our whole approach is to be gender neutral, body shape does have a gender preference to it. So most of the massage therapists are females. And so that's why you have to maybe have the table a little higher than a male. And, you can see some pictures here of that comparing Luke and I. Always read your focus on professionalisms. And this is continuing to talk about the differences in a gender comparison of where the center of gravity falls. Same with the pelvis and the knee. Generally, the pelvis is wider in a female, and then the knees come in, whereas with a generic male, the knees are right under the hip socket. Ankles as well. Believe it or not, females are more stable in their ankles than males. And so we can't tip as much on the ankles as a male can. So these are all why it is likely that if a generic male and a generic female are standing and they're the same height, the generic female would do best if the table was an inch or two higher. So here is a self-evaluation or a paired exercise evaluation that you can take a look at. And then this is an actual examination tool that you might want to experiment with. We are also looking at, in these gender differences, the difference between the spine and physical strength. And I pulled a lot of this information from NASA. They have to consider all of this with astronauts, interestingly, and how they have to ergonomically design the equipment to accommodate these changes. So here are key points. Whenever you see key points in the chapter, slow down and pay attention to them. The next section here is going to talk about specifics to look for in taking care of yourself and what happens if your body mechanics get off. And this happens all the time. Again, this is an ongoing self-monitoring situation. So we got various body areas. Look at the pictures. And your instruction will help with this. And then I'm going to show you where there's a really good video on this. And then there are lots of excellent videos to reinforce this information on the school YouTube channel. So we're going down through the body areas here, and then that is going to bring us to the conclusion of this. And this figure is in relationship to where we're talking about foot and ankle, and giving you these distances apart. You don't want to look like you're walking on a trampoline, but you don't want to have your feet way wide apart either. Okay. Here's all the references. Important to know that this just wasn't an opinion coming out of my head. Unfortunately, that's way too common in this particular content area. And then slow down, pay some attention to these questions. They give a decent example of how you might see this content written in question form on the MBLEX exam. So we're going to look at the Evolve site and give you an idea of where those videos are. Okay, so you've been here, you've already been doing that. So here's your course, and we're going to click on that. And we want student resources. This happens to be the instructor page, so we want student resources. Reminder, here's where the answers are to the end of chapter questions. This body spectrum coloring book is a really nice feature for reviewing anatomy. We are down into chapter 8, and that is where there are some support videos that go with each chapter. They start in chapter 8. Now, these are in addition to the video links that I give you related to your monthly study schedule. Make sure you watch these. So I'm going to click on this. And I'm going to stop the share and share again because I just want to make sure that's coming up. So here's what those videos look like. You can get them larger on the screen by clicking these two little arrows. And this one has this ergonomics and biomechanics video. And takes a minute to load. And then you can click. And like I said, it's been my experience that it takes a little bit to load it. Ah, here we go. See, you just got to keep clicking. Proper body mechanics begins with identifying the proper height of the table. Right. One way to do this is to get the height of the individual and divide it in half. So you want to pay attention to that, even though it took us a while to get there. And also the school YouTube channel has lots of resource material relative to body mechanics and ergonomics. So ta-da, there you go.